Hey everyone, Irene Lyon here. Welcome to this entire world of nervous system health and healing. A little while ago, someone asked the question, and I will paraphrase. It was something along the lines of, what is the connection between nervous system dysregulation and being attracted to abusive and toxic relationships? So what is the connection between dysregulation of the nervous system and being attracted to relationships that are just really bad for us? And what's interesting is this is quite a simple question to answer. So if I break it down really simply, first of all, nervous system dysregulation. By definition, this is what many people call unhealed trauma. So it's when our autonomic nervous system, which really runs the show of our body and our minds in many ways, and our connections with the world and relationships, when we're in dysregulation, there's a high level of what we would call fight, flight, and often freeze running our system. So this is what we would call fight. Flight is sympathetic energy. It's the sympathetic nervous system that's wanting to fight or wanting to get the heck out of the situation. It's protective. We need it, right? If something scary happens to one of us, we might want to fight. We might want to flee. But we don't want to be living with that all the time. So that would be fight, flight. And then there's freeze. I'm really simplifying this, but that is when the system cannot fight and it cannot flee. And so it freezes. It's like that constant, or it's like that deer in the headlights situation where something's coming and we can't run, we can't do anything. We just freeze, we're still. And then of course, with time in the human, if we continue to be in a situation that is not safe, we aren't just, that deer in the headlight. We kind of go into a sort of general quality of, we would call shutdown. We would also call this functional freeze. I've done another video on functional freeze. I'll link that near here. So this freeze quality, and then eventually we could say shutdown or functional freeze, is a part of our parasympathetic nervous system that helps us slow down, and it also protects us from this reality where we cannot fight, we cannot flee, we can't get out of the situation. So maybe this is hinting towards this abusive, toxic relationship thing. Now, one of the reasons I have seen that people go back to or stay in toxic, abusive relationships is their wiring, their nervous system wiring, was most likely brought up in an environment that was not safe, that wasn't healthy, and or didn't allow that person to connect to their inner being, to their self, didn't allow them to express. They had to hold things back. Maybe the environment was stone cold, just like no emotion, no connection, no care. While there was maybe no severe abuse, there was no room for sadness, joy, anger, all the things. And so what happens in that situation is an individual kind of becomes numb. They become disconnected. They are in that functional freeze state, even though there might be tons of this sympathetic fight flight energy wanting to hit, wanting to scream, wanting to express, but they know, let's say mom and dad, they're not into that. So I gotta keep a straight-laced face and keep it all in. So that's one way that we as kiddos and teenagers become very armored in our emotional tone, in our expression, but also in how we sense our somatic qualities. It also makes it such that our spidey senses, that intuition, that gut knowing, right? What is called by Stephen Porges neuroception, our ability to perceive safety and danger, it's not very good when we're living in a state of functional freeze and or coupled with survival stress. We become not attuned to what is right, what is wrong, what is good for us, what is not good for us. Now, the flip side would be an environment, growing up in a family space where there was tons of drama, intense screaming, yelling, abuse. There was always something wrong going on, or maybe there was turmoil with the parents, or mom and dad were not well, or one parent was sick, and there was just always this swirl of chaos. And so for some kids, they deal with that by joining in that chaos, or they merge with it. They become chaos as well, because that's the only way you can survive in that dynamic, in that family system. Of course, the flip side is the kiddo numbs out. They become the good one. They become the perfect one because they're trying to hold everything together. I've worked with many people in the past who were the good child, the good student. They did everything because the family system was a mess, and so they became the adult. And in doing that, they never got their upbringing of exploration and curiosity and play that so many kids really should have, and also teenagers. So there is no one reason why or how dysregulation of the nervous system brings us to connect with abusive, toxic situations. But here are a few snapshots of how our early life can put us into a state of dysregulation, disconnection from self, disconnection from the environment. And then what occurs is we become adults or teenagers, and our system is grooved. It knows the chaos, or it knows the numbed out kind of quality, or it knows, this is chaos, but I can take care of it, right? I can rescue this situation and make it better, because that's what happened when I was young. I was the peacekeeper, but often it's at the expense of our own needs, etc. So what often occurs when a person is in these relationships is it is what they feel is safe. I say that with air quotes, safe, but it's not safe. But to their physiology and to their history, this is just how life is. Often I'll hear from students and clients who say, I had no clue how screwed up my household was until I went to a friend's house and saw how everybody got along, how there was nurture and connection, and people listened to you when you talked, and we had fun and we played games when I went over to that person's house. That isn't how I know my environment at home, right? So sometimes it takes a person being put in a totally different foreign environment for them to kind of be shook awake and go, whoa, that isn't how we're supposed to live. This is how we're supposed to live, and it feels good, but it's also a little confusing. So as adults, when we get into relationships, it is, in my opinion, important to have this radar on board, because what will often occur is someone will get into what we would call a really true safe relationship, nurturing relationship, where there's respect and all those things, and you can express yourself, but it's so foreign to that person that what do they often do? They sabotage it, they flee, they pick a fight, they find a way to bring more drama into the situation. But it didn't need to be, but that's what our system knows. And so having that awareness, that education, understanding, my physiology had this, I'm in this, I actually like this, but it's terrifying. And that's where you as the adult, as the human, must start to have the conversations with that said partner. Now, of course, if you're in an environment and it is abusive and toxic, then best to find a way to move out of that. But of course, you also have to be calculated and safe in the way that you exit, because of course you don't want to bring more unsafety and more harm potentially to yourself. So to come back a little bit to the original thesis of this video, of this question, how does nervous system dysregulation attract or go into or connect with these toxic abusive relationships? It all comes down to this survival stress and what our system is used to, what our system sees as normal and safe. I say that again with air quotes. And then starting to realize, this isn't normal and safe. This is not how I want to be living. And then I'll add one more piece. What again I hear my students and clients say is when they get into those relationships that are safe and are good and are secure, they'll find that their system is again looking for that survival stress. It's looking for a hit of that drama, right? It's looking for a hit of that adversity and trauma because it knows that so well. And so that's where building the capacity, the skills, the tools, which is what I teach in my courses and programs, to be aware that you're even having these reactions to bring more stress in when there's no need for it. That is important. And then communicating, let's just say you are with someone who is good and safe and saying, hey, this was my childhood or this was my early life. I was used to this. I'm trying to shift out. I'm trying to rewire these patterns. And then that's where in partnership, there needs to be a contract, if you will, whether it's just verbal or energetic, that we're working on this together. And that's where sometimes couples have to keep each other honest in a positive way to say, hey, you're doing that thing again. You know, I'm here, I'm not hurting you, and you're picking a fight. It doesn't make sense, right? So there are all these nuances to relationships. And when we're living in survival stress, we need to be very aware of how our behaviors, our actions, how we communicate, how that comes out in relationship. Bottom line, if you're in an abusive and toxic relationship, how can you build capacity? How can you bring more safety to yourself so eventually you can leave, you can get out of that situation? I will post below here another video that I did a little while ago on whether or not we can heal when we're living in toxic and abusive relationships. Be sure to check that one out. The answer is we can start to heal. Quick answer, we can start to heal. But if we want to restore full nervous system regulation back to our system, we cannot keep ourselves in a toxic situation because those survival mechanisms, they run the show and they will keep bringing up that fight, flight, and freeze even when we're doing the work. That is if we continue to stay in that toxic and abusive relationship. I'm going to add one more thing. This information also applies to our work, to our careers, to family systems. So it isn't just in partnership with a romantic partner. It can be friendships. It could be siblings, right? There's so many dynamics relationally that we might not realize we're getting into because of our past histories and our current dysregulation. I hope this has been useful. I hope this has answered a question or maybe more than one around this connection between nervous system dysregulation and abusive and toxic relationships. Thank you all for being here and learning, and we will see you next time.